Black coffee. Do you have honey?
Good evening and welcome to Behind the Headlines. My name is Timothy Nyangweso. Tonight we look at the presidential tours, especially on the parish development model. He has been traversing the country, especially tail end of last week and most of this week. We look at numerous alleviation poverty programs that have been running since 1996. Entandikwa, Bonnaba Gaggawale, Prosperity for All, and we come to Emyoga and the PDM model. He has been in the sub-region of Bukedya, that's 7 districts to mention, all the way from Palisa in that region. But the biggest question is, why now? And who is traversing the country? The chairman of the NRM or the president of the country? Those are some of the questions we're looking at today. But you can be part of the show on our YouTube channel. Go there, drop your comment by text or WhatsApp. Let us know what you think. Or the number 0709 60 25 92. That doubles both as our text number and our WhatsApp number there. Drop your comments, let us know what you think. That's the discussion tonight. Let's get to the gentlemen and ladies in the studio. And I'll start on my extreme left. On my extreme left, Honorable Lumala Dombo, the Director of Publicity and Communication at the NRM Secretariat, is with us this evening. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. It's a pleasure for me to be here tonight once again. And good evening, our viewers. And good evening, my fellow panelists.
Next to the Honorable is Dr. Patrick Wakida, the Chief Executive Officer of Research World International. He's with us this evening. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, sir.
It's good to have you.
I'm glad to be here again.
Thank you for coming. Next to Dr. Wakida is Dr. Sarah Berete, the Executive Director of Center for Constitutional Governance. Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening to you and good evening, viewers.
Next to the doctor is Honorable Dr. Mukasa Mbide, the Vice President, of the Democratic Party, and Yala Emeritus, Member of Parliament.
Thank you, my brother. I also equally greet our colleagues and viewers.
And we'll be joined by Professor Sarah Sali, who is the Dean at the School of Women and Gender Studies at Makerere University. She'll be joining us in a short while there, and she'll be joining this conversation. Let's put context to this conversation. The president has visited, mainly in the Bukedya sub-region, visited about 3 people that have benefited from PDM. And the reports that came from there was a gentleman who was doing chicken with his wife, a piggery farmer, but also a fish farm there. Gave a lot of advice, but also went back to remind us about the Ntandikwa and how this wealth creation idea began in 1996. But the questions we have, is it a coincidence that is beginning to traverse the country now as 2026 elections are looming? And who is traversing the country exactly? Is it the president of the country or the chairman of the NRM? Is this a campaign in disguise? Let me start with Honorable Lumala Dombo. Honorable, what do you make? I saw you give an interview about these tours of the president, and I wanted you to put context for us to understand why now is the president traversing the country and in the Bukedya region to start with.
When should it have been?
PDM has been 3 years.
First and foremost, it is the Bukedya region. Not Bukedya. Bukedya is...
Oh, Bukedya, sorry.
Bukedya, he will be going there next week, the other week on the 18th, when he begins his tours in the Teso sub-region. But at the inception of the parish development model, 1 year after, I think, the president started hearing complaints about the execution of the program. But also, President Museveni, being the Muyekera he minds a lot the details on how a program that he has vested a lot of thought and effort on how it is being implemented. After hearing a series of complaints and what people are saying, he started the PDM tours in the Acholi sub-region. And what he found there was overwhelmingly shocking on the way the execution was being done. He discovered that there was very poor or lack of supervision by the politicians. Many technical officers of government were being compromised, and they were altering the regulations that had been provided and the guidelines. And he thought that if he doesn't consolidate on the supervision, then perhaps the program may get into challenges like the previous programs that had been run before by government. And by the time he left the Acholi sub-region, he gave directives to make inquiries and investigations, and some of the officers of government were arrested. Some of the circle leaders were arrested. And because of that, therefore, that consolidated his determination and desire to ensure that he moves around the whole country in order to establish whether the beneficiaries have been well selected, the people are benefiting like they were supposed to. And since that time, he has been to the West Nile sub-region. He has also been to the Masaka sub-region. And now he has finished the Bukedi sub-region. You know, many people have been asking why now and why PDM. When President Museveni became the president of Uganda, whenever he wants something delivered or implemented by the people of Uganda, he puts personal interest in it, in ensuring that the project or the activity succeeds. And he did not begin yesterday. He started around 1998 when he toured the whole country when there was a fight against HIV. You know, when HIV was beginning here and people were taking life for granted, he deliberately moved throughout the whole country, preaching to the young people the risks involved in the HIV program, in the HIV pandemic. When he also discovered that many Ugandans were still living in the subsistence economy, around the year 2000, he again moved around to preach the gospel of prosperity for all and the 4-acre model. He discovered that he gave the example of Chigezi, where people were producing a lot of sorghum. And they were only using sorghum for drinking muramba and ikwete and other things. But when, in the real sense, the sorghum was not helping the people of Chigezi to get out of poverty. So he started preaching the gospel of transforming the people of Uganda to get them out of the traditional primitive practices into commercial agriculture, where they could have food security, but also have income security. When the census was conducted, the last census was conducted, it was established that about 39% of Ugandans were still living into subsistence economy. They didn't have money. And he coined the word from Bugwere, same Bukedi sub-region, where he said people were living just by the stomach alone, working for the stomach, cholera kida kyonka. They could only work to eat food, and beyond that, he would ask, how do you sustain your life without earning money? So, because of the previous interventions and the failures of those programs, PDM was developed in order to answer the challenges which had been established in the previous programs, but also enabling the people to get closer to the people in the areas of implementation. Many programs which had been implemented in the past, the focal persons were the sub-counties, the sub-county chiefs.
And we're going to come to that, Honorable Lumala. We want to first look at these tours before we get into the poverty alleviation program.
So
when you talk about the president has to go around, What does that mean for the checks and balances? What does that mean for local government? What does that mean for the structures that we spent 300 billion to put in place? Isn't this an indictment on the failure of government already?
No, unless you are saying that the president should not supervise the people who are implementing the government programs, because that is his modus operandi which he has chosen as the president of the country. He has discovered the inherent weaknesses within the structure of government and how people fail to supervise the people that are delegated to do the work. One of the biggest failures which he has established and which I've also seen is that the president wants to rely on the people's representatives in order to advocate and ensure that the programs for which government brings, they reach the people. For instance, when he goes to the leaders and they say a sub-county chief has misbehaved, a cow has misbehaved, he quickly asks, where are the people who were elected?
But the Prime Minister is doing exactly the same. She was in a region and brought the RDC to book about education. Where are the checks and balances? Because it seems like every other structure is failing except the president.
No, do you mean when the Prime Minister is working, the president shouldn't? Because how will the president know or confirm on the information that he gets? Because you know, the president is the biggest consumer of both intelligence and technical information and the reports that come from the implementation of the programs. The president is the one who went and sold the manifesto to the people during the times of election. It is the president who is going to be evaluated when this program fails or succeeds. So this is a program where he has staked all, and he believes that the objectives of NRM, of socio-economic transformation, can be best delivered through the implementation of these programs, especially the parish development model. So he chose and said, we are going to do PDM tours in order to establish, one, are the people benefiting, the beneficiaries of the money? Have they understood the purpose of the program? Are the funds reaching the persons for whom it is intended? 3, are there any corruption tendencies that are being reported, and how are they being responded to? And finally, this is a program which brings the president directly with charge with the beneficiaries. Not many leaders have been doing that in this country. Okay. Where you collect the people of Uganda and ask them, or they ask the president, and he either provides answers, or he asks the technical people who are available in order to come and explain the shortcomings that may be there.
Thank you very much. Dr. Wakida, I think congratulations are in order. First and foremost, you crossed over to the NRM. You spoke and said, I have to work to get poverty out. What did you mean by that? And when you were at this country tour with the president, what did you perceive and what impact has PDM had? And why does the president have to move?
Thank you very much. You see, you have not lived poverty, I would presume. Many of us have experienced it, lived it. And having traveled this world, I have been in Europe, I've been in Russia, I've been in America. I came back here 14 years ago. 14 years after I left, I went back to my village and I found my neighbor almost the same. That experience hurts. The government of Uganda has been promoting various interventions. There was Bonabaga Gawale, there was Operation Wealth Creation. In the particular region, we've had NUSAF, and many other interventions. And it sounds as if none of these have had an impact that is measurable onto the people. A PDM is a model. A model is, in English, represents a way of doing things. I wouldn't sit here and say it has worked or it hasn't worked. As a statistician, I believe in hard data. I depend on evidence-based. And I'm waiting to see what an evaluation would provide. When I heard that the president was meeting leaders, I felt I'm part of the leadership because I come from that community. I have participated in the past in identifying the LOC 5s, the members of parliament, the LOC 1. I get involved. And I wanted really to listen from the leaders. Why is the community the way it is? You said congratulations for crossing to NRM. I haven't actually been a member of any political party. And I want this to be very clear. I've been an intellectual working with this Sarah Bireti to develop policy papers for this political organization, in a way trying to give them a direction. We write white papers for them. We guide them. Because I value that opposition is as critical as a ruling government.
So you had no affiliation to Dr. Kano Kizabesi?
He was a friend of mine, and he remains one. I have quite a number of people that I admire.
You are not a member of the FDC?
No, I've never. I've never held a card. Just like you, probably you're a supporter of a certain person. But just watch this. I came back from Europe after my doctorate, and my first stop was Najanankombe. My task was develop a manifesto, develop a party platform. The next task is, can you help us manage Dr. Kizza Besigye? A man I still believe is as intelligent as he was when he was in the Bush time. So when everybody says it's crossed here, perhaps I have taken an allegiance to a certain position now, and I don't regret it. I do this with all my soul and my body and my head on my shoulder, because I know where I am heading, and I know why I am going there. Poverty in that community has denied people almost all the opportunities. Opportunity to study, opportunity to live
Decent lives.
I drive a very expensive car. As soon as I reach my community, it's reduced to a bicycle because you are the only person driving that community. It hurts. And I took a position and I said, okay, what is my value in communities like this? Because if I came to the community and I gave this one 50,000, 20,000, 30,000, I would drive back. I would leave them in pain. I would drive back in pain. And I can tell you, individuals have got no capacity to change communities as individuals. It's only government that has that capacity. And I took a decision. I said, okay, for over 10, 15 years, communities are asking me, when do you represent us? And I've been saying, one day I will tell you. One day I will tell you. And the sound has been growing. And I know why they are saying this. Because poverty in that community is a painful experience. Now, I am happy for one thing, that the mobilization of leaders has started. It's the first of its kind. That you can sit with different leaders from different parishes, from different villages, and try to ask them, why is this not ending? And as a fountain of honor, you live that experience as you live there. Because I listened to the president say he stopped somewhere as he was driving to the venue where we were. And there were this old woman and this old man, and they said we sleep hungry. Sleeping hungry is the highest level of poverty. And he said he asked himself, on the other side there is water, a river. On this side there is water.
And
Why
island
is
in the
it that
middle.
you cannot have enough to eat? Would that be a failure of government? It's a failure of leadership at the community level. That you have water on the other side, you have water on this side, but the people are not asking for anything beyond the basic necessity of life. And we come to Kampala and talk about these things casually, as if it's a very simple issue. Many of you who are here, my brother, the most important person in the legislature in the East African community, has not lived poverty. Sarah here, I know, she hasn't. She's probably a daughter of a minister. Sarah, I've been to your house, you know that. You had power before I was born. There was electricity in your house.
But Dr. Wakida, is the president the silver bullet to solving that? poverty
You
we're
see,
talking
the
about?
thing, it's called mobilization.
Because you're talking about leadership on the ground, the local leaders. They understand the context of that place like you do. Why does the president need to go there
Let
to
me
talk
tell
about
you,
PDA?
let me tell you. The power of mobilization is the center of action, if you don't know. If it's going to take a prime minister, take the minister of health, take the minister of education, take the president, because they were all there, to see how this community is staggering. And if they are going to have to adopt an affirmative action to change that community, so let it be. I would not sit here and say, President, why are you going there? Because for 36 or 40 years, a transformation hasn't happened. I've told you, I left that community. The year was 1997. I traveled out of the country. I came back many years later. My measure of transformation and movement was done through my neighbor, who I knew. This neighbor did not have a mattress, did not have bed sheets. They covered themselves using the gomas of a wife.
For all that period?
For that period. So I come back, and it's a problem.
Still
Now,
they do the
You
same?
left 1997.
Yes.
This government has been there
This
almost
is
40 years.
this is what I'm telling you.
He hasn't just.
My problem is it the NRM failing? Is it the local leadership on the ground failing? Is it the influence of the people, the elites, that are failing? If you read Plato's statement, he says, if you want fools to rule you, you elites, fold your hands. If you want communities to suffer, you elites with knowledge, fold your hands. Are we going to be in Kampala, drive and put on suits? We must all join. Let me tell you, the power to change communities is embedded in three things. It's embedded in knowledge. That's very important. It's embedded in money.
Money?
Money. That's very important. Most importantly, it's embedded in leadership. And so, state. Because state allocates resources, and those resources can be used to transform communities. Now, I have been talking about poverty for a long time.
And I want to come back to that one, Doctor.
Yeah.
Allow me, let's finish the president's tour. Doctor, you have heard from Honorable Lumala, you've heard from Dr. Wakida. When you look through your lenses, the only time that I have in my young life that is 2020 when the president did not traverse his country. But every time it comes closer to elections, is this a disguise of campaigning by the president?
Each time, of course, like you stated, each time we are near, because the campaign period has already started, we just have 1 year to go to the polls around January 14th, 15th of 2026. We shall be choosing other leaders. So the president is on a campaign trail, but because he's using state resources, then he disguises it as a tour of poverty. poverty that he has presided over for 4 decades now. And when Honorable Dombo was submitting, it's as if there is a miracle the president is about to make in his 38th, 39th year in power. And of course, my brother and friend, Dr. Wakida, when he, powerful submission, some people might say maybe he has seen the light. Others might say maybe he has encountered darkness. I don't. I don't know which is which, but he's demonstrating the darkness of poverty. I think he has encountered darkness, and he's going to the place that has created darkness. I don't know whether people who have created the problem can solve it. So, but yeah, we have to respect his decision. That's how democracy is. And but briefly on a PDM, the Equal Opportunities Commission released the report last week. There is a big section of analysis of PDM and why it is failing. The data that Dr. Wakida used to work with, I don't know whether he will continue working with it in NRM, but it is all in that 11th annual report
with the caution.
Yes. It is all in that 11th annual report of Equal Opportunities Commission, well researched. And the government, instead of wasting resources to say that they are finding out the performance of PDM, they need to read this report and take the recommendations. The report highlights the challenges of PDM. One is diversion of funds for personal ventures, both by the beneficiaries and the people administering the funds, and we have been seeing some arrests almost in all parts of the country for PDM funds. The second reason is failure to learn from previous experiences. We have heard, of course, Bonawa Gagaware. That was announced when I was a young child in primary 4, primary 5. Bonawa Gagaware.
Which year was that?
When NRM had just come to power. It's a very long time, of course.
1999.
It's a very long time. I was in primary 4. So, so that shows you how long you have presided over poverty. So, Bonawa Gagaware, Ntandukwa, whatever, microfinance, operation wealth creation, it's just a change of name. I don't think there is anything beyond a change of name. So that the government has failed. So the Equal Opportunities Commission says government has failed to learn from these experiences. Then the third challenge is access to markets. Because PDM, if you follow the pillars, they should have storage, processing, marketing facilities. Nobody's talking of that. PDM, a well-designed concept, was reduced to handouts at implementation. The other pillars were dropped, including sensitization on financial practices. It's only now distribution of money, handouts. The other pillars are nowhere to be seen. Then the opportunities, the report also talks about failure to use population parameters, political interference, which is now also happening, because PDM will end as a major campaign slogan of NRM. Yet it's a program using taxpayers' money. It's not a program of NRM as a party. It's a program of government where NRM is a ruling party, but it shouldn't be. And we had said it before, even on this show, that this is just a campaign program for 2026, and it's coming to pass. The other challenge is non-implementation of all the 7 pillars, especially sensitization and the marketing and processing facilities. So if the government was serious about taking stock of the challenges of PDM and improving it, they would read such reports instead of wasting money on country tours. Dr. Wakida was talking passionately about the president meeting so many leaders. He has been doing this for 39 years. There's nothing new. This is what he has been doing. So maybe you participated for the first time, but I'm sure even Honorable Dombo will confirm that this is what NRM has been doing. And the leaders go on the inducement that they will pick some money. It's a handout system. So I think for me, it's high time, maybe, let me assume that maybe President Museveni does not know, but it's high time he realized that no nation in the world, anywhere in the world, has ever developed from handouts.
Okay, thank you very much. Honorable Mukasa, midday. You have had the submissions, and rightly said by Dr. Sarah Virete, even last week there was an NRM caucus. Still, the president was meeting leaders. What do you make of these regional tours by the president, especially in hindsight that 2025 is going to be busy, electioneering, 2026 January we're voting? Do these have any coincidence, or are they correlated?
You know, this is going to be a very difficult debate for me to handle. And that is because of my own personal fixations on what exactly takes place. I do not have a belief that we hold the presidential elections in Uganda. But I know that there is an exercise that usually takes place, which is usually a clog of some sort. It is something that is organized by way. Honorable Dombo was a student leader, just like me. There is what we call a cultural gala. Usually what takes place under the circumstances of the laws and the operationalization of institutions that are towards elections, what we hold usually is a cultural gala. But we know the results of an election even before it takes place. So
you have once called it a selection here.
Yes, so which is a democradula of some sort. We know that probably what the president should now be looking forward to under PDM has nothing to do with the democracy, but governance, good governance. So I would do. But then again, I try to look at the methods of contact with the populations for assessment purposes. He's also doing a guided tour. And in the event that probably those guiding him are those actually that guided the funds, it is very unlikely that he's actually looking for any solution in terms of wherever the process and procedures have gone wrong under PDM. The public will bear with me. I have some bit of complexity in terms of my voice, but it will sort out properly. When we were studying as children, there are things that we used to call, now I think it is referred to as a teradido. You know, petty lies. Because I used to think there existed somebody called Mr. Hare. Until until now, I cannot properly tell my children whether Mr. Hare exists or not. Now I do not want to go into the rigors of explaining what exactly is it. They have visited the zoos, they have gone everywhere. Where is Mr. Hare located that they have not seen? So, but this poverty reduction, alleviation, whatever, it is just a mere teradido. It is a logical impossibility that a president of the Republic of Uganda can conduct an assessment on a poverty, either eradication or alleviation model. It is impossible. It is generally impossible. For example, how does he generate the sampling procedures as a president? What is he looking for example? what were the intents and purposes of the model? Was it to reduce vulnerabilities within the population, or to eradicate poverty, or to establish amongst the multiplicity of the population a capacity to reinvest by the population for purposes of employing the others? So for me, it is a hodgepodge. It looks like a madman throwing stones, and everything you hit, you call it the target. So what the president is trying to do, he knows the results of an election, but he's now trying to mitigate the possibility of rejection of the results. He is now trying to reduce the possibility of rejection of results, not to be as the extent of the 2021 results. What for him he works on is how vehemently will the opposition reject the results. That is what he looks forward to. He knows the results. Everybody knows. Whoever cares to know, you know. So the president of the Republic of Uganda needs to be told that poverty itself, the way and method by which it grounds itself in the pockets of personalities, it follows a multiplicity of models. Therefore, if you are to fight it, you also must employ a multiplicity of models. And they are all field tested, very many. Now, for you, if you go on following Myoga and PDM, there are no results you are looking forward to. It is impossible. Because they are models. For example, if you have been a student studying for 14 years up to university, doing nothing, there is a poverty model that is education related that has attacked you. So until you have got an alleviation model that is education related, that model itself, there is a problem. Now, because historically we know that women were not usually working, traditionally, these were supposed to be domestic personalities. There is a poverty model that attacks, that is gender-based. Now, for you to look at an alleviation model, there must be a model that is gender-based. Now, the country adopting a single model, and a whole president of a country who has led for over 39 years, to go on following, looking forward to whether or not it has worked, for me, it doesn't make good sense. It can't work. It is impossible. So I think this country needs to, probably we need to adopt one national day for crying. Because clearly, what is this that we are now seeing?
What would be the intention of the national cry?
Because we are disappointed. You cannot have a whole head of state led into the countryside with a stream of cars, making impromptu stoppages, meeting younger people playing football, giving them a few coins for football. Then some other traders also, I mean, some farmers also sprouting from the countryside and beginning to tell you, first of all, these are planted individuals for the president to see. In the event that, Mr. President, you are not aware, these are mobilized for you. And because there must be a database of, for example, all beneficiaries of PDMs. There must have been, if the president wants to do a localized assessment personally, that database should have formed the attendance list of all of those that, for example, His Excellency, the big man, is going to, then there must be a mapping. But now the president going and disembarking, addressing a bit of a rally, addressing 10 people, then one person obtains 10 million. This is a logical impossibility. It is a teradiddle. It is Mr. Hare. So for me, I think I forego that right of belief that it is generally leading to anything that can alleviate Uganda and improve our GDP per capita of the person.
Thank you very much, Honorable. Professor, when you look at these presidential tours, what do you make of them?
Thank you very much, Timothy, and good evening, our viewers and panelists. I think for me, there's nothing wrong with the head of state touring the country he rules. First of all, there are tours that he has been doing, either going to someone's...
So, Professor, is it the president or the chairman of the NRM?
right now he's legitimately a head of state. And it is also not a secret that it is the NRM which won power in 2021. So the chairman of NRM happened to assume the leadership as the president of the country. So I think distinguishing them will be difficult. But legitimately, there's no harm with the head of state touring the country. He's touring the country. Other times he has been doing it either through going to lend a hand where there's a by-election or someone's burial or someone's consecration. So he has been going around the country. This is the first tour, of course, which has been tied to PDM. And I think it's also difficult to say that it is a wrong thing for him to be doing that. It's true PDM was established. It has a PDM secretariat. It has some supervision arm from the Prime Minister's office. I think the implementation unit, the delivery unit, has some bits from local government and everywhere. But I think still there's no harm with someone to go and check what is happening, if that is the way the current tours are being framed. Of course, being a head of state who is also likely to campaign for leadership in 2026, it will create some advantages because he's legitimately moving and he's meeting the people and he has the mandate to do that countrywide. But of course, going back to PDM, 2 days ago, I think yesterday and the other day, Makere had some meeting on PDM hosted by the Vice Chancellor, where we had Minister of Local Government, Minister of Finance, PDM Secretariat, and all those aspects. And indeed, there were a number of things which were discussed in that meeting, one of them relating to the challenges of PDM, and it was an open discussion. A report, I think, of Minister of Local Government, which was being reported on what the challenges in PDM are. Many that the colleagues here have pointed to. The issue of financial wastage, looking at, because it's called a parish, I think the district and the sub-county just keeps off instead of actually providing leadership, because it's actually a parish, so what do these levels have to do with it instead of providing guidance? And Dr. Wakida talked a lot about leadership as a problem. Of course, there's the other thing of understanding what the money is for. But one of the biggest challenges actually they discovered, or that was being presented, relates to how everyone thinks there's going to be new money for the different pillars that Dr. Virete is talking about. Of course, they picked on pillar 3 for financial inclusion, so money was pushed. So that means the pillar 1, pillar 2, up to the other pillars, they are also waiting for money to come. Yet these are pillars which are supposed to be integral to different sectors within the government. Pillar 1, which actually relates to production, that's the Minister of Agriculture, others about health, others about education. So I think there's still need to work out how the mother ministries or the mother sectors integrate the PDM within their budgets, because the assumption of government is that what is needed for pillar 1, pillar 2, and the other pillars is within the sector budgets. Yet the people implementing PDM think it's going to be different money from the ministries. So just like pillar 3, financial inclusion pushed money, everyone's expecting money to be pushed. So that is going to be a challenge. But basically, going back to the tours, for the tours to be useful, I think pillar 6 around the parish-based information management system needed to have worked. Because at the point of inception, there was supposed to be data collected all the time. So that now, if the head of state goes to see, it would have helped him to make a clear assessment, other than people simply reporting, by having the actual data. But now that has not happened, because that's supposed to come from the ICT side. So who collects the information? What kind of information should be collected? Who participates? What infrastructure is on ground to collect that information? And of course, it's not just information of who had what acreage and planted what. There will be need for real-time information, because you could have gotten the PDM money and you planted very well, then there's a drought. So you have the money, but you're not necessarily rich. Probably you have been impoverished. And of course, the other thing which came out was the circles, the PDM-related circles, which were actually formed for the purposes of pushing money. How can they be reorganized to be a source of investment in the community, so that as someone is coming from the garden, also you banks the money with the circle, so that the circle does not exist just to receive money from the center and push PDM. But can it also be a source of financial lifeblood within the community, so that people can even invest, so that PDM money does not come back as envisaged, but remains in the community as a seed fund where we can actually have capital development, so that instead of it coming with this amount, it is grown further and further. So there's a lot of work that has to go to PDM in as much as there are structures to implement it. And given the slow pace at which it has achieved, probably it might require this level of political mileage to activate it, for people to know that, by the way, we are at the district, we are the sub-county, we are expected to be lower. But another thing, and maybe because the mindset change pillar has not yet taken off, I think we also have an issue in this country where we respond to powerful personalities. That's why Dr. Wakida talks about his expensive car becoming a bicycle. That's just basic need of transportation. But also there's the assumption that the big person who has come is going to make a miracle for us, has the answers and everything. So also people know that that's why you see you are having different ministers posing as patients, so as to discover whether patients are receiving treatment or they are being exploited in these government health facilities. But going back to the local, it is not the first time that people have surrounded the president to tell him what they don't like about their cow, about their DHO, about their so many things. It looks like that's how things are done in this part of the world, but which needs to change. So that happens because I think the lines that are supposed to provide the supervision and leadership are not doing what they should do. As I said, the district and the sub-county has been discovered to have a problem relating with PDM because of the way the PDM was branded. It's branded as a parish thing. So if I'm at the sub-county, do I go in? And if I go in, am I welcome to go in? If I'm at the district, how do I go in? So there are those things which still need to be sorted. And hopefully from this from this national tour, probably we shall have better statements and better direction to how PDM will go. I hope from these tours, the line ministries are going to be told the other pillars other than pillar 3 are yours. Carry them and make them work right up to that level. Thank you.
Professor, sticking with you, and even as we go back, let's get back to PDM that you're talking about. When you talk about PDM, how do we insulate it from politicization to economic impact?
Thank you very much. First of all, we have to realize that PDM came on a vehicle of a political manifesto. So you cannot necessarily distinguish. World over, any government or any party campaigning to get to power makes promises. These pledges. These pledges are based on both economic production, employment, and social services. So now it becomes difficult when that comes in and then you tell them you should insulate this. Actually, even when you look at international news, if they are blaming maybe the poor healthcare system in the UK, you blame it either on the Tory healthcare system or the Labour healthcare system. You cannot distinguish service provision in a political system from the government that pledged to deliver it. So I think we are asking for too much to separate. So those who pledged to deliver PDM and introduce it have a duty to ensure that it's working, because that's the basis on which they are going to be evaluated in 2026. So we shall evaluate, did PDM work, did Operation Wealth Creation work, because it's true they are vehicles for economic development, and we assume that they chose that vehicle because of a certain economic ideological model. So we shall assess it as that.
So after, Honorable.
I would like probably Professor also to address me on this, because I have a feeling it would not be obscene for the president to do what he's doing if he were, for example, guided by a parliamentary report on the performance of the parish development model. Because once it commences as a manifesto, the moment you form government, then the pillars of government themselves must now operationalize it. So I have a feeling that probably if he were guided by a parliamentary report on oversight, then we would know that even his discoveries will themselves be authentic.
But how do you guarantee that he's not guided by it?
The problem is, it started as a political manifesto.
Yes.
His results are also going to be aired as a political manifesto. And I think we are going to be in a campaigning mood for 5 years between all elections. That cannot guarantee.
I think one thing you cannot...
Let's have Professor
guarantee governance.
One, I would like to reiterate that you cannot distinguish politics from development if that is actually how it came. And this is not just a Ugandan issue. world of, look, what has President Trump been promising people? And that's what we're going to assess him on, okay? He has made certain whatevers. There are issues around taxation. There are issues around immigration. That is just how politics works. Work comes on board to organize economic distribution of resources, okay? Which we call economics. So it is, there are resources. Who is best suited to deliver those resources? It is either me or it is you. So when we go to the people, we present our manifestos, and the people choose who of us is best suited to deliver those proceeds. So
when does a manifesto become a national document?
When the person assumes the head of state. After the election, the person has come and came with this manifesto, we want to see it work.
Because, Professor, there are challenges that in some parishes, because you are of a particular color, you are pushed away. And that becomes a challenge because you need to align somewhere to get this money. But my question to you before I come to Honorable Mbide, doesn't such poverty alleviation programs set us up for a welfare trap?
I think now that goes beyond the individual head of state who is doing that now. Because and you need to look at just what has happened to the African continent. Why does poverty stay with us regardless of changes of regimes? So that requires a more detailed discussion. And some of them actually would have been enshrined in if the PDM aspect of mindset change had worked. Because of recent, I'm reading a book by Morgan Housel about the psychology of money. And the argument in that book is not about having the money. It's about how people relate and how their behavior is modified when the money comes. We have seen or been told stories of when people get PDM cash, some of them put it into agricultural production, and you have seen the proceeds. But there are also those who get PDM and then you marry another wife. There are those, there's one in one area who got PDM cash and organized the motorcade because he has always admired people in the motorcade. So the motorcade and the sirens went escorting him for one day. Another one had never been in a place where there was a flush toilet, got PDM cash, hired a room in a hotel just to be able to flush.
So who should we hold accountable for such?
No. What I'm trying to tell you is that to build a culture around money takes time, okay? So right now, there are people who have pushed this PDM, who are in charge of supervising it. The ones who take the money know that they have to bring it back. So that is, the Secretary for Production needs to ensure that actually production is taking place. But the same Secretary for Production is still waiting for money to be given for him or her to supervise the production. Those are the other pillars we are talking about, which are not working. Okay. So that's what I'm saying, there's a PDM secretariat, maybe which is another problem because since it was out, these people don't think. They think everything about PDM should be for the PDM secretariat, as opposed for the line ministries. That will need some level of reorganization. That's why, for me, if the head of state is going to have national tours, and I hope he's going to go everywhere, these matters should be documented. We cannot say for sure that he does not have intelligence of what's working and what's not working. We cannot say for sure that he doesn't have a parliamentary report guiding him, because we don't know. But maybe he has, maybe he doesn't have. But I still emphasize what is important is information management system, the pillar number 6, to be made to work, so that it will not only be the duty of the head of state to go and see what's working and what's not working. Even researchers can go and see, even MPs can reach their constituents and say, give me the database. Which families are ailing with which sickness, with illiteracy, with the financial poverty, and all those kinds of things.
That's ideal. The reality is different.
Yeah, because we want it to be
before
different.
Before I come to Honorable Mbide, let me give a quick reaction from both Honorable Dombo and Dr. Wakida. I'll start with Doctor. You wanted to say something, then see, I'll end with the Honorable.
I think Professor has simplified this. If you're a student of political economy, you know that the two are never detached.
Yeah, you can't detach.
Politics and economics define that individual. And every time you write a manifesto, that manifesto is a combination of politics and economics. And the economic policies that you promise is what keeps the politics going. And if the FDC, the People Power or the NRM have that booklet, I remember the time when we wrote the Leap Forward, a mix of politics and how we'll do things those days. I read the manifesto that my brother Dombo have always written. Anytime you fail to implement the manifesto, you have failed the politics. And yet the manifesto is actually the plan of action that you propose to people.
Okay.
So if you want to detach those guys who are in government, the one you gave power, that please don't make use of PDM. You're about to go to the US and tell the Americans that now you have elected Trump, let him not tamper with the border stuff. That's how politics is played. Unfortunately, PDM is surrounded with a lot of suspicion because of the previous failures. And indeed, learning from the previous failures would guide, maybe, because the design of PDM is that let's jump these political hyenas at a district that have been eating the money. And we put this money to the ordinary person in the village. Let me tell you, in my village, there are about 300 people. That village where I come from is called Kawami. We're about 300 to 600 people. We literally know each other. We know each other. Every parish is supposed to receive how much?
100 million.
100 million. It will be difficult for you, a member of that community.
Every parish or every recipient?
Every parish.
Every parish.
Every parish is supposed to have,
parish.
every year.
1 million?
100 million. It will be very difficult for you, Sarah, in my community, to sit down and really embezzle that money. That was the rationale.
Did
The
it
question
work?
is, wait a minute. You see, economics is not a Bible thing. You cannot wake up and say, let this be, and it's there. And I think, in my view, the number of parishes that just received money, to start evaluating them might be even very difficult. The question is, can we put effective mechanism at a parish, at a village level, to ensure that this money is doing something?
And Dr. Moon, come back to you.
Yeah, I just want, I
Yes.
have a question for Dr. Wakida.
Yes.
In the first year of disbursing PDM funds, 30% of the circles that received this money were ghosts. Is it working or not?
No, you see, you're going to have, in a country that ghosts have been something to learn about, you know, there has been ghosts everywhere.
So is that justification to have the
Let me tell you, the reason, ask yourself, all the money has been going to the district in the past. Why has it been designed to go to the parish?
Okay.
Because
Yeah, let me have Honorable Dombo lastly before we take a break.
The way the president answered that issue, which Dr. Avirete is asking, usually refers to the parable of the sower. He says when the sower goes to sow, some seeds fell on the rock, others fell on fertile soil, others fell in the bush. All the seeds did not land on the fertile soil. He said, even the money we take for PDM, not all of it will land to entrepreneurs, but to those who will succeed, will progressively become an example to the others for them to succeed. The other issue I wanted to raise to my brother,
Honorable
Mbide,
Bide.
you know, he's talking about stories about Nsanji, Anyali de Nsanji, Wakaima. PDM, PDM is not about Anyali de Nsanji. PDM, you are going to a village and you are seeing poor people. The national census was conducted and there is a percentage of the population
Do we have a report?
living below poverty. And the president going does not mean say he doesn't receive reports. Actually, there is a secretariat, and there was a presentation by the PDM secretariat, yes. Honorable Galabuzi. He was a lead producer, presenter, but for him he uses the information that is generated by that information management system. But the president knows that even the previous programs that were generated and which failed, they were generating very good reports. So the question is, how do you find out whether the report being reported is reflected on the ground? That's why he surprised us when he came to Butaleja.
Yes.
We were expecting him to land by helicopter. He came driving in a vehicle, and he came stopping on the way and interacting with the farmers he got on the way. He would stop in trading centers, and he calls in videos. So in so doing, he gets information to compare whether the information generated by the system which Mr. Galabuzi runs is really in consonance with what exactly is happening on the ground. So, whereas there are established systems on how best we can transform societies, but in Uganda, the findings are that there should be a number of approaches, the way the president goes to find out about the information, the activities themselves, how they should be done, and then finally, the failure of the traditional leaders like members of parliament, chairman LC5, and the local government district councillors. That's the question the president was asking.
Okay.
If all this is happening, where are the leaders who have been elected, and are they providing the leadership that they should?
Let me read some feedback that has come through. This is Isaac from Oyam. He says the return of PDM is not there. This is because there are people who are using the money for paying loans in the villages, saving, and when the president pays a visit to the local leaders, they take him to someone's farm. PDM money is like giving a hungry dog the red meat to take it to a dog owner. People are already poor. Some of us are just using the money to get married. If the money is collected, the prison cells will not be enough to accommodate the Ugandans. Okay. Good evening, Timothy. The honorable panelists and Honorable Dombo, tell us how much it costs for the president to visit a place. We should stop this idea of spending money in monitoring or evaluating projects that are injected in the project itself. You send 100 million to a parish, you spend billions to go and supervise them. This is Chakala. Okay, thank you very much. Congratulations to my brother, Dr. Wakida. As much as his decision to embrace the NRM ideologies, I know you were a great mobilizer for the time I met you in Bali. I will support your initiatives you intend to implement in your constituents. I remain your brother. This is Magendu in Nairobi. Okay, thank you very much. Lastly but not least, this is quite lengthy. I'll read bits of it. I want to ask Honorable Dombo, is the administration that brags of the NRM achievements, are there any failures? Why the president has to come to, why the head of state has to come to supervise in order to detect the wrong things going on in the government? Why are those people not doing anything but wasting taxpayers' money? I want to ask, is there, okay, I want also, okay, that is done. Lastly, this was congratulations. Finally, good morning, good evening, Timothy. Thank you for the show and the insightful show. Tell Dr. Wakida that there is a saying, if it walks and appears and quacks like a duck, it's surely a duck. He's trying to deny that he hasn't joined the NRM, but with time, I'm sure he will be the presidential advisor or probably an RDC somewhere. Even his sitting position is next to Sam from Mengo there. A lot of messages coming through. Thank you for keeping them coming here. Now let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be discussing poverty alleviation programs. Can they be successful in this country? This and more after this break.
Honorable Dom, PDM is Mr. Hair.
To be a winner, you you must have the discipline of a tiger. But when fueled with MTN Momo, winning is easy. Simply get your phone and use the Momo app or dial *165*3#, enter merchant code, enter amount, enter your Momo PIN, and pay. Congratulations! Your car is happy, and now you stand a chance to win mobile money with MTN Momo.
The Homes and Construction Expo is back. Are you looking for answers to your property and real estate development questions? Come and interact with experts in the industry, including architects, engineers, developers, interior designers, financiers, and more from 30th November to 1st December 2024. The expo will be at the Millennium Park, opposite Philip Omondi Stadium, under the theme Affordable Housing, Innovations and Technology. There will be captivating exhibitions and insightful discussions daily. Entrance is only 10,000 shillings per day. To book a stall, contact 0772 354 940. The Homes and Construction Expo is brought to you by New Vision.
The parish development model launched in 2022 by President Yoweri Museveni to fight poverty and enhance service delivery at the parish level has disbursed over 1 trillion Uganda shillings to more than 10,500 circles, benefiting over 1 million individuals countrywide. The government of Uganda appreciates you for embracing PDM and using it to move away from Okorera Ekida Kyonka. You are encouraged to continue participating in this journey towards socio-economic transformation.
Welcome back from that quick commercial break here on Behind the Headlines. My name is Timothy Nyangweso. A lot of messages coming through. I'll read some before we get into the show here. I'm joined by Professor Sarah Sally the Dean at the School of Women and Gender Studies at Makerere University. I'm also joined by Honorable Mukasa Mbidde, the Deputy President, the Vice President of the Democratic Party, Dr. Sarah Birete, the Executive Director at Center for Constitutional Governance, Dr. Wakida, the CEO of Research World International, and the Director of Publicity and Communication at NRM Secretariat, Honorable Lumala Dombo. Let me read two messages so that we can jump into our conversation here. Good evening, Timothy. PDM was meant to benefit the poorest of the poor in the development sphere. These people only qualified for grants and not any other intervention. It's a financial suicide to give a loan to such a person. I recall vividly a woman in Tororo who was interviewed as she was waiting for PDM money. She was standing next to her visible porous thatched roofed house, and her prayer that it was to get the money and buy mabati. Certainly it would never liberate her. Instead it would sink her deeper. Benjamin in Kampala there. Thank you, Benjamin. Sam in Ginger says, Timothy, thank you for the show. Dr. Sarah said handouts do not create development, and in case of Uganda, PDM is a bribe and hoodwink citizens into corruption. Finally, His Excellency is touring to evaluate citizens' ignorance about his poor development policies. You cannot put someone whose initial capital for 4-acre model farming they are preaching is 20 million. A role model for someone who has an initial capital of 1 million, it's not possible. This is Shea from Koboko. Thank you very much. Keep the messages coming. The number is 0709 60 25 92. That's our WhatsApp and text number there. Or go to our X platform, hashtag UBC Behind the Headlines. Let's get to it. Honorable Mukasa Mbidde, as you've talked about the hair, let's get to the poverty alleviation. For this 39% of the population the president keeps talking about, I looked at statistics of 2021 that showed 2019 were 21% poverty. We also went to about 2022 that showed it had grown to about 25%. There's a report by Sauti that came out 2 days ago, showed hardships of securing necessities at 68%. If the UBOS report is anything to go by, multidimensional poverty is a new feature. How do we use poverty alleviation? Like you said, education, multidimensional. Yes. How do we get that to work for all these different facets of our population?
Okay, first of all, we need to understand our culture, our societies, the complexities and exigencies of the historicity of our own societies relative to the economics of the country. We are going to look at poverty, and I have always heard the president talking about household income.
Yes.
As the basis of assessment. Now, how are households established? There was a time I was discussing somewhere, and I told them that even when households are established, we can look at the stage of nuptials, for example. The stage of intersection between genders, intersection between man and woman, the creation of a new family by existing families. Stuff that people call weddings, for example. We can look at the cultural existence, and I think this is the mindset program. Which cultures establish investment families? And which cultures establish consumption families, for example? That would determine the poverty, the models through which poverty attacks such cultures, to the extent then that alleviation follows the multiplicity of the same models. Number one, when you look at, for example, the two cultures of Banyankole and Banyarwanda at weddings, much of the weddings of these people are punctuated by speeches, at the end of which speech there is a cow given to the newlyweds. Now, that is an investment economy established for the new household that is being established. Now, when you look at the wedding cultures that are established in central Uganda, for example, it is generally the introduction of perishables. They either must be tomatoes If there is anything relative to a cow, it must be one leg of a cow, with guidelines that all of those have to be consumed in a period of not more than 3 weeks. Now, that is a consumption household established. So when you are establishing poverty alleviation models, we know that the other homes established are homes that are productive homes. So GDP per capita assessed in terms of those cultural institutions is different from the GDP per capita here. Here, it is very hard to find the new families being richer than the old family. But there it is possible. So, in my opinion, I think we need first of all to understand it is very unlikely that you can use a cross-sectional single model for the whole culture, for the whole of Uganda, and that model is established as applicable to all and sundry. Number two, when you look at what the president is doing under PDM, which had got to the extent of licensing, then you look at now the propensity for rationalization, including of the Microfinance Regulatory Authority of Uganda. Then it means that what PDM is going to remain without a regulating entity that is a standalone are going to be just a function of logistics, campaign logistics. And when the people misunderstand it for logistics towards an electoral process, I think if you deny that that is a fact that forms at the subconscious level of their brains, then you are convincing me that you have a very great sense of humor. So this country needs to know there must be a distinction between politics and economics. Otherwise, this is why there must be a distinction between governance issues and political issues. This is why I saw one time the president met traders so that they can agree whether a digitized taxation model should be adopted or not, when he actually knows that he does not have any decision to the contrary that he can take. Because this is governance. There are things that you must sort out by voting for a certain government. Now, when that government is doing it, it does not consult you, including taxation. The professor has also alluded to a possibility that when you look at Donald Trump and also the programs that he says he established, they have everything to do with the mentionings of, for example, the bills, the laws that are established in the House, the laws that culminated into the establishment of this process, the laws that did this, some were bipartisan. But in Uganda, personalization of a model to those that will vote for that same person, it begins to look at the subconscious level of every consumer as a logistical support for another electoral season. So in Uganda, it is very unlikely that, for example, when you give somebody 1 million shillings, without a background of, for example, of education in terms of investment, because we know that it is very unlikely that everybody should be an investor in a community. Because then who is going to be a worker? It is extremely unlikely. So there must be there must be very serious choices that we must make. The choice to popularize your own self for electoral purposes must be a standalone. Then the choice to establish development and growth for a country must also be a different mechanism. If you merge the two in a component, in a country like Uganda, for example, all we are going to be doing is mobilizing persons for collections, and to the extent that then they will vote for you. The next day we will now begin to see the portrait of the president on the money, to the extent that when whoever receives it will know that this is the one that has given it to you. Development is going to be a logical impossibility.
This appeasement and tokenism that we see, especially when the president is moving, how does it come to an end? Because it does not help the eradication of poverty.
It is, and by the way, that is a system, we can term it as prebendalism, where, for example, an office bearer helps himself to resources of the country in order to consolidate himself as a leader. He may not understand it because it is not even direct, but the result is, it is corruption. The President of the Republic of Uganda should not be personal when it comes to fulfillment of objects for which government is running. These are appropriations, and accordingly, it must not be a personal gratification that something has happened. To the extent that even he passes on, because I saw one other person, he has even given now physical cash.
He always does.
You know, it looks like a furtherance of what he received. And that in the same vein, I am adding 10 million. You are not the one, Mr. President, adding. Because which budget are you using? Did Parliament really appropriate money to the extent that the President himself can run a poverty alleviation model out of pocket, for example? So it is a recipe for corruption. Here in Uganda, I know of a country where the Minister of Production insisted in 3 cabinet meetings that the President should visit a certain industry, which is actually working so well. Until the President asked that minister that, why don't you organize a day for me to visit all industries? To the extent then that this industry does not engage in tax evasions under a guise that can be created as if it is my own factory. Then I said, now, I know of a president who actually escorted an export, a consignment of TriStar, for example. I saw. So one wonders, because you see, it is a matter of, for example, because the president is at the airport, escorting a consignment en route to, for example,
AGOA.
Yes,
AGOA consignment.
The speed with which operations must be done in such a way that the consignment goes creates templates of the same documents that shall be used forever. Now, that is again a corruption corridor that has been established by the president. So you may try to fight this by introducing now huge outcomes that become now the serious problems that will attack the very thing you are fighting. In my opinion, I think it is a wrong process that the president is adopting in terms of development of a country, which is actually a correct process for him to be re-elected.
Dr. Sarah, I know you have something to respond to, but let me add a question to it. Poverty is one of those things that is biting. Dr. Wakida talked about it, that his measure was his neighbor, and that was the unit he used. When you move downtown, Chikuwo, and see how many shops are closed, when you hear how many people government owes money because of procuring, is poverty something that we are willing to deal with? Or is this government willing to deal with poverty?
Well, poverty is biting both government and citizens. When you look at the debt portfolio of Uganda, I think it has surpassed now the 100 trillion, I think. We borrow more than we can pay. 47.5% of our budget is for debt repayment. That leaves no money for service delivery, and we continue to accumulate more debt. So it's not only citizens that are struggling, and of course poverty, the economy evolves. When the government creates an enabling environment for people to be more productive, the government will generate more tax, more income, and then reduce the debt burden. But when the people are less productive, then the government has no funds to run its business, and it will accumulate debt. So you have poverty at the government level and at citizen level. And that's what we are experiencing. I know that the different government agencies keep sharing contradicting figures of our debt portfolio, and that's deliberate, just to confuse citizens. But we are not doing well as a government. Government people also throw statistics about economic progress that is not realistic. or cannot be realized in people's livelihoods. And it's no wonder that the census report failed, because I don't know whether now there is a final report, but there was an attempt to dock the figures and everything went hayway. And some region's population was produced as if there was a genocide. And there was a bit, an attempt to dock the outcome of that census. And I don't know whether we even have a census report now to talk about. But going by the report you shared, talked about of Twaweza, the Twaweza report indicates that there is increasing poverty in eastern northern Uganda as usual, where people are facing the brunt of economic hardships, despite their heavy reliance on agriculture for both food and incomes. And that's the region where the president was. And why is it that these regions are facing more hardships as compared to the rest of the regions? There are issues of climate change. We see flooding. Of course, we have extreme weather, periods, the rains with floods, but also the prolonged drought, which affects people reliant on agriculture. You have low crop yields, rising commodity prices, stagnant incomes, lack of employment opportunities, but also insufficient capital and limited access to education. Just today, the Daily Monitor published a report of 92.44 dropout rates from primary to A level. A country enrolls about 1.9 million students, pupils in primary 1, and only 142 are able to sit A level. Can they account for 92% of dropouts in this country? It's a scandal. We have an education scandal in this country. So how do you then talk about development when you cannot skill your population? 92% dropout. It's a scandal. This government should have gone on a retreat to discuss the crisis of education instead of loitering around. But are they bothered? Because these are not their children. These are children of poor people. We are creating a class society, both through education and economy. We have people that will permanently be in poverty.
True.
And will be servants of other people's children. And then we have another class we are grooming for corporate world. Intentional and deliberately. Education is the only genuine equalizer you can have in society. Do we have this opportunity in the country? No, we don't. 40 years in power, we don't. And the increasing poverty should be traced to the inequalities in education, which are entrenched. That Honorable Mukasambide talked about. I want to conclude with the model the president preaches, the 4-acre model. The 4-acre model assumes that people have land, because you must possess the 4 acres. According to the Uganda National Household Survey, the latest report, only 20 to 25% of Ugandans own 4 acres and above of land. Meaning that the president's model for alleviating poverty is only focusing on 20% of the population. When you look at other factors of production, other enablers like electricity, our rural electrification program stands at the same ratio of 20 to 25%. The PDM structure, or the pillars that talk of processing, assume a creation of cottage industries. How do you create cottage industries without electricity? How? We are in the digital revolution. What is our internet penetration in this country? only 26% of Ugandans have access to internet. 26%. So you are looking at key factors of production. Land, power, electricity, only covering a quarter of the population. And then we claim that we are creating mass programs. That's why the other pillars of PDM were abandoned. Because how do you talk of processing without electricity? That's why they abandoned their own pillars of the program. So when it comes, I want to conclude with the issue of politicizing everything in the country. Yes, political parties are supposed to compete on the basis of ideas. I know that this situation does not exactly exist in this country because of our rudimentary levels of politics. It's a competition of money versus violence. Who has capacity to dish out more money, or who has capacity to unleash violence, then you win the elections. So we don't compete in terms of ideas, and people don't necessarily vote the best ideas. But when a government creates policies, its duty is to create an enabling environment for implementation of these policies. It's not to follow and dish out money, a personal handout that you are implementing your manifesto. No, then that ceases to be a government. Because even NGOs don't work like that. Your duty is to ensure that there is an enabling environment, laws, money, structures for these policies and programs to be implemented. It is not to go to every village and village to implement. No. So this business of saying it's my program, I must follow it, I must stop at every trading center to talk to people, that ceases to be a government.
Okay, thank you very much. Dr. Wakida, you once, 2 years ago, you said the NRM government does not have the capability to have a poverty eradication program. You say the economic impact, they rather prefer to have political impact. You have now aligned to what you were shooting.
No.
And you as a statistician, looking at some of the numbers of multi-dimensional poverty, looking at the poverty numbers in this country, you have looked at what is on your village. And you have traveled. The Asian tiger countries have had programs that have brought one country up to be able to have that of their population. Is that a possibility in this government that you have joined?
I think the issue is that it is very true that there has been a lot of failures. Failures to implement plans that the NRM has drawn. It's not a secret that there also have been some successes. And I am not that kind of politicians who would sit and only, criticize. And even my NRM, if I join, I will not stop to talk about the failures.
Have you joined?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I will not stop to mention those areas that fail. 2 years ago, I made that statement because I saw a staggering implementation plan. I also understood that poverty needs a very strategic intervention. I am an economist by training. I measure poverty both in quantity and living standard measures. A living standard measures goes into the household and looks at the way somebody lives. Where the quantitative measure use these things, we use the Milton Keynes approach of GDP per capita and income per capita. Why did I think that they don't have a proper plan, because I thought they hadn't learned from the past failures, and I still believe so. That you have a leadership at a district level that is supposed to supervise the parish programs, but they are devoid of that PDM. I think that's what the professor was talking about. That you have these guys who are supposed to go and check, and they're saying that program belongs to the parish. Definitely that's disaster in itself. It's disaster in itself. And those are things that, like I said, I am waiting to read the evaluation report. There is an evaluation report that's being conducted by NPA. And we'll be happy to look at the details of those failures. There are those that you can actually see and you say, here it won't work. And I think Sarah has mentioned and said, you give somebody 1 million shilling, but that person has got too many problems. By nature of human being, you start by solving the immediate troubles you have. And yet, it remains a problem. Let me tell you my idea. And I draw again this idea from history. When Mr. Museveni came to office in 1996, I was a very small boy. He introduced what he called the State House Scholarship for his community. You barely got it if you're from another community. I'm sure Sarah could have benefited.
Oh my, I'm not from his community.
In my village.
What is his community?
Wait. I'm in my village, we used to have the herdsmen, people who looked for our cows. They were all over. They lived in the swamp areas. Yeah. Let me tell you, those people are the most educated people today. Yeah. Have you asked yourself?
And landlords.
Where did they get?
They married with investment.
If we went to Makerere University here, I wanted you to go and do a census of both the learners and the professors and ask them.
And the administrators.
And ask them, how did you get this education? You'll be shocked. There was an affirmative action to transform that community into what you see. They had the cows, they had the ranches, but they didn't have knowledge. Now my brothers got the West with all the knowledge, easy to conceive information. And one of the things that I will be discussing with my brother Dombo is we will be asking this government to give us an affirmative action around education. If you went to my village and you are looking for prominent people, that community there, you realize one thing, that all of the educated people started from there for a lower level. They went to Mbale, they went to Tororo, they went to Nyakasura, they went to Igang, they came to Kampala.
Under UPC.
And you have a population that studies from P1 in that same community. They go to secondary school in that same community. After senior 4, they get married.
In that same community.
In the same community. They become counselors in the same community. The immediate affirmative action, and this is a multidimensional approach, is to get people off the land. I will tell you that the average ownership of land in my community is a half an acre per person. So as you talk about the 4-acre model,
you are
there is that challenge there.
You are excluded.
Now, the younger people, and as you talk about land fragmentation, again you face another problem. That's because these people do not have another source of living. They survive on the land of their ancestors. So if you produce 4 boys, you have your 3 wives, because it's a culture in our community. People marry up to an average of 3 wives, by the way. Each wife is given a piece of land with his children. There is no way you are going to tell those 3 wives that please unite and use this land together. There is no way you are going to have people stay on that land in a fragments of pieces of land. So you need to start to think and say, how did Mr. Museveni turn these herdsmen into an economy that we have today? Because for me, I learned from the past. The lawyers call it a precedence. A precedence. If we went to that community and we got this money we are putting in PDM, and we put in these schools, and moved some of these children to different places, 10 years from today, we shall have people we can relate with. Let me tell you, I have people brought from there who are working for me. An average earning for them a month is 1 million. But the people who remain in the village, and I want to give you the extent of this poverty. An average household has 5 people, a father, children, and the relative. They are 5. They grow rice for 6 months. They get 500 kilograms of rice. How many are they? They are 5. They have taken 5 on average of 6 months. They get 500 kilograms of rice. They sell at 2,000 at most. They have made 1 million in 5 months for 6 people. That's the most painful thing you can say. If you divide 1 million against these 5 people, each one for 6 months has worked 200,000. Each one for every month, you can get the average. That is the poverty we are talking about. That person cannot change their lives. The other day, when I was in the presence of the president, I got almost icked. So this guy comes and he's teaching us how he's making fish, and that fish ponds will make money.
A model farmer.
Yes. I asked myself, how much did you invest to make that money? They are not able to separate the input costs and the profit, the sales and the profit. You put 20 million, you make 22 million, and you say, I am moving forward. In economics, we have a concept called deepening poverty. Deepening poverty is like a cancer inside you, and you will not know until when you cannot walk. Recently, I sat down with a number of colleagues, including Dombo, I think you were consulted, Honorable Musenero led us, and we said we cannot drive without a roadmap where we are going. We've come up with a strategic plan up to 2040. We've identified areas that if you want to move out of poverty, can we also do A, B, C, D? Because we were designed by the imperial government to do cotton. Cotton forever has been the cheapest crop. Now, when we label the crops, what Dombo and the group have been calling a chivalo, we've identified those crops. And we want to integrate that in strategic plan into the 2040 national plan, and then see if we can move the community towards that direction.
Does it have the different elements that Honorable Mbidi is talking about? We have education has gaps there. Does it have those elements?
The multiplicity of models
you see,
that answer the question.
I have just told you, you need a multidimensional approach to the kind of poverty that exists there. And I've just told you, the other day they announced the senior 4, senior 6, primary 7 results. And you know, the worst performing areas were from those communities.
Okay. Before I get to Honorable Dombo, Professor, you had a comment, a quick comment, then I get to Professor Dombo. Honorable Dombo.
Okay, thank you very much, Timothy. I think I just wanted to weigh in also on the issue of how do we get out of poverty. First of all, as Dr. Virete explained, she explained so many causes of why we are poor, the lack of predictability of the weather and everything, and we really run a very a nature-based agriculture system. So that's likely to be vulnerable to whatever shocks and changes in the environment. But there's also a model where people say, if you want to deal with poverty, what do you subsidize? In many of our countries, which actually are post-colonial countries, we have tended to subsidize consumption because those who lend us money make it difficult for us to subsidize production. That's why at the dawn of independence, there were so many industries. With the neoliberalism in the 1980s, they were all taken out. So what do you have? You look for factories, you don't see them. There are very few that are beginning to come back with industries. So government is in a dilemma. Do we subsidize production, but who is going to produce? Who are the producers we have in the country? They are largely the peasant farmers and maybe a few foreigners who are coming in to set up industries. Those ones, you give them a tax holiday. Yet the same people, and remember there's also an issue of population increase every year. Yeah. So the same people require services. So do you subsidize consumption? Do you subsidize service delivery? Or do you forget that and you focus on production? So there will always be that dilemma. So if you choose to subsidize production, production, it would be good, but you will need the middle class to carry that. If you are going to choose to subsidize services like education and health, the returns are going to be long-term, okay? Luckily enough, we don't really subsidize direct consumption, like food and whatever. We don't do that. But we see that each time we have these electoral cycles, basically by the MPs like Honorable Mbide, you give us handouts. So in a way, you also inculcate a culture of simply consuming. So people know that 2026, the MPs or the candidates are going to be around. You don't even need to farm. You're just going to wait. This one gives you this, this one gives you this one gives you that, and you can survive, okay? But then you also have a situation where the government cannot afford not to subsidize those things. So some of the loans we are getting are actually going into things which are long-term, but which will not give us returns very fast. So that's a dilemma the country has to deal with. But on the issue of production, for example, the PDM, financial inclusion really came for people who it was supposed to be for people who didn't have finances, so that you also make them belong by not allowing them to be very destitute. The assumption was that probably it will lead to production. Okay. But we have seen that it has not actually led to production. It has people are simply consuming it. So that one will always be a dilemma. And so with regard to the poverty situation, you have to look at how the class system works, but largely look at how the psychology works. Right now, if you go to a place like Mayuge, which I visited recently, people are not farming, people are into artisanal gold mining. You take 2 months to get a nugget. If you get that nugget, you take it to Busia, you make maybe 10 million, you survive, you drink, you're happy for the next 6 or whatever month. So there has to be organization, and we hope that from these tours, those tours will also say something about production in Mayuge. Not just, I hope they will reach Mayuge anyway, because a statement has to be made. And you look at all of these things, no agricultural production taking place, we are headed for food insecurity. And you ask, where's the leadership in that place? Thank you.
Comment by Honorable Mbide, then I get to Honorable Dombo.
Yes. I think in Uganda, there is going to be a problem. If, for example, government handles the issue of poverty by way of fire brigade tactics, like a leader who wakes up towards an election and begins to address voters on the ballot box, it is very unlikely that where we are not, and I know Professor has been addressing it, but not directly, because she's not a politician. This has got to be ideological. Yeah. There must be stratification between the producers and the workforce, it is impossible that the whole country can be given investment money to produce. It is impossible.
Okay.
So government, of course I read the NRM constitution, I saw. It says, the preamble, part of it, that it is ideologically multi-ideological, which is to me is a logical impossibility. There must be stratification. And the problem, Dr. Wakida has said that it is an impossibility. That was the manner in which land has been fragmented. It is a logical impossibility that your interventions can target land, especially where government has itself not addressed the land fragmentation issue itself.
Okay.
I wish we handled this with some bit of more time, because it is, for example, one would ask oneself, and I can use now examples. Why do we have public beaches? Why do we have, for example, residences in Kololo? Why do we have housing estates? It was intended to establish, by those governments, to establish what we call equal opportunities for all. A stratification of society between workers and the investors. That where investors build along water, those that have worked for them and obtained salaries are also given public beaches as a matter of equal opportunity.
Yeah.
That where investors that are wealthy live in Kololo, we have got establishments, housing estates that are also answering the very questions of workers to also live within the same homestead. So this happens when a government sits down and plans ahead for a long period of time, than a government that begins to sprout from their offices and begin distributing handouts to all of those that are supposed to be producers without even the knowledge of production. So in my opinion, those are going to be christened the handouts, and they are going to be logistics for the next election.
Thank you. Honorable Dombo, quite a number of views put here, submissions, where subsidies should go, multi-dimensional solutions to one problem. But yours will be a two-pronged question. One, what is the expected outcome of these tours? Two, how do we eradicate poverty? How is the NRM, especially now that we know you will be around, how do you eradicate poverty with multi-dimensional solutions?
You know, just this morning we were discussing with the Dr. Wakida, specifically talking about our region. And there are indications I've been seeing since I was a little boy. And I've kept asking myself why some of the things are like this. I'll give you an example. One of the biggest challenges we have is mindset. When we were young people, we were taught by our parents that you go to school, succeed, get a job, and earn a salary.
Yes.
And that is, if you go to Eastern Uganda, we used to produce for some of the best public servants who believed in this.
To earn a salary.
Yes.
But when you look for the entrepreneurs, you don't get them. Timothy, you know that we had very powerful people in Eastern Uganda. We had ministers. We had you go and find out what they did. Do they have any farms?
No.
We had the Agurahoris. We had the Kirundas
Yes.
doing UPC during this administration. Even right now, we have very prosperous public servants from Uganda. But when you go back to their villages, there is not much that you can see. And this is part of the problem that has been mindset. When I lost elections in 2016, The young people who were celebrating were saying, now let Dombo go and dig. So to them, in their mind, they believe digging is a punishment. Yet now, when I go to my farm and I dig, they come and steal my food. So this is the fundamental. So the people of Eastern Uganda, in order to make this transformation, there must be a radical transformation. When you look at Western Uganda, I've been studying. Even when you look at the quality of leaders elected in Western Uganda, it's totally different.
Yeah.
When you go to the participation of land people in Western Uganda, whether in churches, whether in schools, whether in community, is totally different. It's not surprising to go to Eastern Uganda and you get a chairman of a management school committee who doesn't know how to read and write. I've been a member of parliament and these are issues we've been preaching about. So transformation shall need to take a radical approach. First, let the land people in Eastern Uganda transform themselves and participate in the productive lives of the communities.
True.
Let people go back to their villages, people go back to their churches, people go back to their mosques, so that they can be part of the integral process. Our parents pushed us to a certain level, and they have since left. But we have not been present in order to continue with the transformation which our parents were doing. That's something that we need to begin discussing and finding out how we could produce. I'll give you an example. We recently went with President Museveni to Kisozi, and they brought farmers who were selling milk at 800, and were very proud and happy to say, we are rich, to have a giga. The man was saying that you use your calculator to find out how much money I earn, because he was milking 1,000, he was selling 1,000 liters of milk. So he said at 800, find out. But do you know how much milk costs in Mbale? I have cows at home. I sell milk at 1,600. So the price of milk in Mbale would be an incentive if there are opportunities. The 1 million shillings may not be enough. But I've seen homes where people have bought goats and people have bought cows. Now, the biggest challenge, Dr. Akina, you know, when we were talking with the president, one of the biggest challenges which is there is now the theft.
Yeah.
There are people who have invested their PDM money
Chicken.
either in dairy, in chicken, in this. There are many young people who are doing nothing, but all they need to do is to go and steal. So in order to transform the society, we must progressively devise mechanisms which are appropriate to the different situations of poverty that we have. We have knowledge poverty. People who need knowledge must be provided with knowledge about what is happening. I think the president, during his tour, one of the things he's emphasizing is the knowledge about, you saw what when you were in Palisa, he brought these farmers from the fish committee is called what? Limoto.
Limoto, yes.
The Limoto land, I think reclamation, whatever that project is called. When you look at, I visited it myself. I took a whole day to live, and I visited the fish ponds. You will see that there are many people who don't know how much they're investing in the productive ventures that they are in.
Okay.
He asked the people of Butaleja, how much money do you get out of the rice? There was a array of answers. And that shows you that nobody has sat down to do any costing about what is required to invest and what is the real benefit that is getting out. And one time when we went to Chankwas, he asked us, okay, if rice is so beneficial to the people of Butaleja or the people of Bukedi, why is it that Bukedi is the poorest region? Because if rice was beneficial and people are cultivating it and they're benefiting from it, then it should be seen through the transformative processes that is creating in our lives. So we shall need mindset change. Then 2, encourage the people to get into productive ventures. Then 3, the traditional practices must change. You know, in Butaleja, when the father dies, the children share the land.
Yeah.
And this causes a lot of fragmentation. And the more you fragment, even the more it becomes to use mechanization in the productive processes. You find many homes when we were still young where they could use tractors for plowing. They could use oxen for plowing. Right now, they cannot even use the oxen. Why? Because the lands have been fragmented. Because when the patriarchs died and the children shared and started selling, then created even a bigger problem.
Thank you very much.
I think I wanted to say something about this, really.
Dr. Wakida, let me come to you.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to conclude differently. So in your conclusion, you're going to throw in the by-election in Kisoro. Just a quick comment about it. I'll start with Professor. I'll come to Honorable Mbide, Dr. Sarah, Dr. Wakida, and finally, Honorable Dombo.
Yeah, thank you very much. About the by-election, yesterday I saw a clip where, on the TV where I think Honorable Mateka Senior was telling us to remove politics, religion and the divisionism in politics. So I hope that will help that election to go on very well. The president was there. I think that's all I can comment on that. But as my parting shot, I think one of the things we need to focus on is how I wish PDM had been implemented differently, in that it had provided services and the infrastructure at the level where people can do value addition. Instead, we are still grappling where production and the rest go and giving people money in terms of financial inclusion, which is good. So we continue experiencing waste at the community level, and so that remains a challenge. But on a positive note, I think there's a bit of transformation occurring in our country if we cared to look. Many people are getting together to pool resources.
Yes.
One of the biggest financial engines, you talked about working with Godba.
Yes.
I think his circle in Ntungamo has how many billions? They were even thinking of putting up an airport in Ntungamo because they are too rich that they can no longer borrow. So many parts of this country, whether in offices, but also in communities, I've now seen it happening in parishes. People are getting together to save money. And they are saving together money so as to implement in bigger, to invest in bigger ventures. So I think those of us who are a better privileged, but those who are in charge of making decisions like Honorable Dombo. And as you do these national tours, it is to identify, I hope you will be able to identify which ventures certain areas need, so that when those circles, the people's own driven circles, require to invest in something, these services are available to them. And lastly, we should not forget industrialization. For example, I think in Mbale, where we have the Uganda, the industrial park. The industrial park alone, even when we say it's doing last mile assembly, hires more than 4,000 people. So if we can build bigger industries, we shall be able to get many youth into employment. So finally, I think that let the tours continue, but whoever is doing the documentation should do very good documentation for all of us to read. And even we who have to go back to the communities, pick something to learn from and to support our people with. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Honorable Mbide, both your parting shots and the by-election in Kisoro.
Yes, I don't know. First of all, I don't know why I can't believe in the statements made by the senior Mateke, because he's a completely very divisive person himself, extremely sectarian. Yeah, he's a very sectarian. I wish he does, because I have followed his Twitter handles and I know what he does. So it is very unlikely that he can turn around to be a saint in that direction. You see, and I have kept on telling people, you do not take pride in swallowing a very huge coconut until after probably 48 hours, where the results can also be palatable for you. We can. You can start taking pride after the 48 hours, because then we know that even the end game, you have managed it. So when you start on premises like the senior does, it is very unlikely that such seeds sown by him will not germinate into proper material that escalate the very thing he actually also doesn't want to obtain. However, what should we do? I think the country needs to go back to zoning. Uganda the economy of Uganda by the 60s used to grow at the same rate as the economy of Great Britain. But it was because it was clear. We had zoning. We knew where for production purposes, we knew where every product would be obtained from. So all marketeers, traders, all and sundry would know that if you needed tobacco, you would go to West Nile. If you needed anything related to dairy farming, you would definitely drive to the west. If you wanted the cotton, there would be Bugishu and coffee and central Uganda. So it would be easy for market purposes, identification of market, production, even movement of labor, it was clearly easy. That alone would definitely, by way of stratification, determine the growth patterns of a country. A government would definitely now enjoy interventions that would have regard to development of an area. Today, for me, the way I see what government is doing, they are facilitating a consumption economy. Okay. Definitely every 1 million shillings is consumed before even the process. Because you see, those that have actually given it to the recipient, before they get back to their own offices, the 1 million is by a half consumed. Then you find that PDM may not actually materially even work in Western Uganda. Because what would be the tradables? What would be the investment choices that a person would make with 1 million shillings if one is engaged in dairy farming?
Thank you very much.
So in my opinion, then it continues to be guesswork, and the government needs to get back. Like Dr. Wakida, you are going to do a very huge piece of work. I hope you do not take steps that are longer for your own legs, because where you have gone, that address really might become a very big problem for you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mbide. Dr. Sarah.
Well, maybe first quickly pick on what Honorable Mukasambide has shared, that in Western Uganda, what do you do with the PDM? I remember the assessment in my village. Yes, Dr. Wakida has been in my home. My mother was told she doesn't qualify. Many people in Bushenyi were told they don't qualify for PDM. But also
and the chairman, one of the chairmen himself said perhaps we don't.
Yeah, but because it is problematic to administer for them. But also, I want to note that really there are families in Bushenyi that would benefit from PDM if it was properly being implemented. Because it's not that everybody is above PDM level. On the issue of, and this goes to Honorable Dombo, many of the NRM leaders, when they are discussing poverty or the economy, they discuss as if they captured power yesterday. And they have realized, they have discovered ABC. They've been here for 40 years. But they are still talking at that basic level. Because the two, my neighbors on the left, when they are discussing issues in their region, it's as if there has been absence of government in terms of people's lives. Why don't you look at that as a failure of NRM? Instead of finding all other reasons than the actual problem in your region. You are discovering, you are meeting, but these guys have been here for decades. 4 decades, they are still making a discovery of solutions to their people. This is the failure of government. And as I conclude on Kisoro, but I wanted to say one thing on education. The president in the region did mention and kept warning people who charge fees for where he thinks his government is funding education. How do you fund education at UPE level where each child is supported with 20,000 per year? What can you do with 20,000 per year? And you think you are investing in the future generation of this country, and on rally after rally, you are condemning, people are collecting fees. In the Equal Opportunities Commission, they have, I've said that they've really done a good job. They have indicated the fees collected in these UPE and USE schools per area and what is the purpose of those fees. Some of them it ranges from 4,000 per child and it's for lunch, for meals. Others 17,000 for uniform. But you have NRM taking to every public area to condemn these schools when you are giving 20,000 per year, meaning that this is 7,000 per term, and you are busy condemning poor schools for trying to bridge the gap of your poor funding and the demobilization of education in this country. I think this is something we need to call out to really. It is embarrassing that you expect a child to be educated for 7,000, and they are even saying they are going to arrest state teachers. Don't you have things to do?
Dr. Sarah, about Kisoro, and we go to Dr. Wakida.
Yeah, for Kisoro, that's the best candidate win.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Wakida.
Yes.
A lot of research, a lot of work. Generally, your course is heavy.
You see, when somebody says, you could have put your leg in a wrong place.
You said you might stretch your leg too far.
I have ever been in an exercise of fishing, and you measure the depths of the water by putting the first leg.
You don't put both.
So cannot take one leg first. I know where I'm going. So this country is ours. We should stop.
Ours as Ugandans?
As Ugandans, okay. Yes. We should stop yapping and start doing something about it. The biggest challenge that the intellectuals have encountered, including myself, was that we have done more work as activists and done less as politicians. Mark those two. An activist has got wider eyes. You see many things. A politician has got both the eyes and the power to implement these things. And I call upon the likes of Sarah, very intelligent people, that we should stop yapping and start to go in positions where we can do something. Now, one thing that I have said about
before theology,
let's listen to Dr. Wakida.
One thing that I know about development is that it must be intentional. You want to cut a forest, you must have a panga. You must have an axe. You be prepared to burn the bush. Very intentional to change something. Our people, especially the people who are facing this poverty. In the East, for example, and I normally use the nearest example, which is what I live. I live that community because I go there whenever I get an opportunity. We need an economy.
Okay.
We do not have a single economy. I can tell you, the day we shall stop eating food that comes from Bushenyi, that comes from the Elgon, that milk that comes from Bushenyi, the meat, the cows from Bushenyi, we would have created an economy. Because let me tell you, money fears poverty. Money goes to places where there is money. That's why even the little money that is there will go to purchase things like meat, like milk, like clothes, like sugar. So money fears poverty like anything else. You can't have it.
Thank you very much. Lastly, Honorable Dombo, on both Kisoro and your parting shots.
Timothy, what Dr. Sarah talked about education requires a bigger debate than just the small mentions that we have had. Because there is no way in a society that there can be 95% dropout of the children. That will show you that there is nobody who has qualified. That will show you that there is a problem with the statistics that we generate. Recently, we were in northern Uganda, in the districts of Lango, and we discovered that many schools, there have been a school count, the people count in the schools, and they have been exaggerating the numbers in order for the schools to benefit from excess numbers that have been declared. Actually, the money which is sent to the children in the respective districts, the per capita contribution from government can be enhanced without making any additional money, provided the statistics is put right.
Do a head count.
That's what is being conducted. So that one can be enhanced. The second one, there's been a big war in Butaleja about the teachers charging children money. The cheapest school, which was charging examination fees, was charging 40,000. The highest was charging 70,000. And they were charging for every child, even those that the government paid for.
Exam.
So the question was, where were they paying the money for registration of UNEB when government had already paid for the same children? So there is a lot of corruption that has been taking place. And these are areas which must be investigated and worked on. Finally, in Kisoro, we have a flag bearer, and the president yesterday went to consolidate the campaign for the flag bearer. We strongly believe we have a very strong team on the ground, led by Honorable Dr. Chris Variomunsi, Honorable Jacqueline Chatwaire, Dr. Tango Doi, Honorable Seninde, and many other team from the Secretariat and other members of the Central Executive Committee. For us, we know that Kisoro is NRM ijana ku ijana, 100%. But there are a few challenges during the primaries that created the challenges which the president was talking about yesterday. But we shall eventually overcome it. But we strongly believe that the National Resistance Movement is going to win the elections, and we shall be here celebrating one of these days.
Thank you very much. Let me read some feedback that has come through. I love the presentation by Dr. Sarah. She's a true Ugandan. If the president needs people with heart and passion for this country, Dr. Sarah should become the Prime Minister or should join the cabinet. Dr. Sarah. This is Ongom from Arua. Greetings, Timothy. My village has never seen a coin of a Myoga or PDM. What happens every political cycle? I see women here becoming encouraged to keep buying yellow flyers and applying for the same. At least tell Dr. Wakida we should draw more cartoons and thank them for joining the economic work, okay? Tell Honorable Dombo to stop being a motivational speaker, saying that 100,000 can start a dairy farm. I want to inform him that the knowledge they want is of a certain group of students sent to learn extensive agriculture in Israel, but the state just ignores them. This is Morris from Kampala, okay? This is Ochen Patrick from Yumbe. He says, I like the submissions of Honorable Mbide, Dr. Birete, Dr. Wakida, though it is not aligned to government. You will open the eyes of the people in power to rethink and redesign the future of this country, okay? Finally, I am James from Gulu. Why should the president visit every district to monitor projects when he is heavily represented by RDCs, DRCs, ARDCs, a waste of time and money? Okay. Thank you for your messages. Gentlemen and ladies, thank you very much for gracing us. I want to thank the production team for making today possible and for you sending through your messages, as many as they came. We'll end with this quote. Overcoming poverty is not a gesture of charity. It's an act of justice, by Nelson Mandela. Good morning.
UBC